All right, what's up, guys? It's AJ with Bottom Split Podium, and I am here to talk about hardware news. I know it's been a while since I did a sim racing video. As I said in my last video, I do have the Logitech RS50 now. I just don't have time to use it. I did manage to build a gaming computer, which is really, really great. I have an RTX 5090 with 32 gigs of RAM, so you can tell I feel like a baller. I did buy all of this hardware between October 2025 and like February 2026 because I believed, there was intelligent information coming out that a hardware was going to get more expensive, and I believed it. And I believed it because I didn't put a personal sort of feeling on the information. I didn't make a decision based on emotion. I looked at the facts, I looked at the data, and it all made sense to me. I did on the ground research, I talked to people, and I found out that, this AI thing was definitely starting to take off. A lot of my friends who work in software had told me that their jobs were using it. My job is using it. And a lot of people, they see the productivity, the value to productivity that it brings. And I realize, oh man, anytime that your barber is talking about something, it means that it's blowing up. So I believed that hardware was going to get more expensive just because from, a technical perspective, it makes sense. Like these accelerators that are used for AI data centers, they use HBM memory. HBM memory is made by the same memory manufacturers that make DDR5 or whatnot. And so if they're going to allocate their memory to HBM instead of GDDR7 and DDR5, then of course GDDR7 and DDR5 is going to become more scarce, and scarcity leads to, if demand stays constant, then supply is lower, prices go up. It's a natural thing. People are angry about it, but let me ask you something. If there's 50 of something and 200 people want it, do you think that all those 200 people are going to say, okay, I promise that I'm only going to spend $50 on it. Let's just draw straws and see who gets it. It doesn't work that way. Someone says, I'll pay 60, and then somebody else says, well, I'll pay 70. And, as long as there are 50 people willing to pay, $200 for that thing that was $50, then that thing's going to be $50. That's just basic economics, supply and demand. Now, that's the reason why hardware started to get more expensive, and it started to get worse. They sold out all of their 2026 memory capacity at like the end of 2025, and it looks like they also sold out all of their 2027 memory capacity. But hold on, because the AI bubble is popping. That's what everybody is saying right now on YouTube channels, on Reddit. All the Steves are angry about it because the CES conference that they went to was really boring because it was all just AI this and AI that. And now, according to some experts, the AI bubble is about to pop. Oh, so wait for it. The cheap DDR5, it's coming, it's coming. Well, it's not that simple. I'm here to offer a more nuanced take on, whether there is an AI bubble, whether an AI bubble is popping. And I'm here to give you my opinion based on it. And I think you guys should listen to me a little bit because I knew that prices were going to get more expensive, like even a month and a half ago. So, back around the time that, like maybe even 2 months ago, 2.5 months ago, around the time that my nephew was graduating from high school, I had made a promise to him that I was going to upgrade his computer before he went to university if he chose a public university as his, university of choice. It was between that and a private university. I told him, hey, private university, you're going to put yourself into a lot of debt. You have an offer to go to a public university in state. It's highly ranked, and it's going to cost you basically nothing. If you choose that, I'll upgrade your computer. Like it's a promise I made to him. He chose to go to that university. Unfortunately, timing wise, it meant that I was buying a motherboard, CPU, and RAM in like June, which was not great because it was much more expensive than it was in December. But, I'm not going to tell my nephew, you know what, I'm not going to upgrade your computer because I think that these prices are too expensive. As an uncle, I have an obligation to keep my promises to my nephew. And, he did a great job. He deserves his hardware. I'm not going to take that away from him because of, how I feel personally about prices. I went to Micro Center and I was walking around in the store. And at that time, the 7800X 3D combo with 32 gigs of RAM and a motherboard, it really looked good to me. But unfortunately, I deliberated on it. I walked around the store for like an hour. My mom was with me, and I was like, I don't know, it's kind of expensive. This whole thing was like $400, not even like 5 or 6 months ago. Like, this just feels really expensive. I just couldn't believe it. And wouldn't you know it, that very day, in my mind, I believed that it was going to get more expensive. Something was telling me that it was going to get more expensive, but I thought I had until the store closed. It was so bizarre. On a random Wednesday, Micro Center raised the prices of the 7800X 3D bundle by $100 in the middle of a weekday. It was like 6 p.m. They weren't going to close for another few hours, and they raised the prices. The clerk was like, I'm sorry, but we didn't give you the sheet of paper that says that you're going to buy it at $599. It's $699 now. And I was so flabbergasted, and I immediately thought to myself, okay, how can I save this situation? Do I just pay the $700? But in my mind, I thought, you know what? Actually, the 270K Plus bundle is $549, and it has 32 gigs of RAM. That CPU is very, very great for mixed workloads of gaming and productivity. So I bought it for him, and in my mind, I thought, you know what? This is smart, because I know that if AMD's raising their CPU prices, Intel's going to do the same thing. It's like a TikTok kind of thing. And as luck would have it, less than 2 weeks later, the 270K Plus bundle went up by $100 to $649. And how much does that bundle cost now? I think it's like $700 now. And the 7800X 3D bundle went up by another $100. And now there's speculation that hardware is going to get even more expensive before the end of the year. Now, I know what some of you are saying, but the AI bubble's going to pop, AJ. The AI bubble's going to pop. Hardware prices have to come back down. Well, maybe not. You see, the thing is, memory makers have already sold their allocations for 2026 and 2027. Now, do you think that they made those contracts like really loose so that manufacturers that are buying that HBM memory can just say, oh, no, wait, demand is going down, so I'm just going to cancel? Nope, it doesn't work that way. Memory manufacturers got screwed over so bad the last time that demand dropped, and they got left holding the bag. They're not going to fall for that again. No. This contract says that as long as we deliver that memory according to the timelines that we promised, you have to take it. So, NVIDIA doesn't have a choice. They're buying memory from Hynix and SK Hynix and Micron and all those companies, Samsung. They're selling that memory. They're delivering that memory. So the HBM is going to be built. So these companies aren't going to just pivot and go back to building, DDR5 or GDDR7. Now, if market sentiment gets really, really bad, which it looks like it is, NVIDIA might come back and say, hey, look, demand is going down. Help us out here. We'll do something for you if you do something for us. And the memory manufacturers could offer to make an adjustment. They could say, hey, okay, you know what? We already scoped out and it's already in process, the HBM memory that we're going to deliver to you all the way up to the middle of 2027. But for the rest of 2027, we'll try to shift things around and we'll try to offer you GDDR7 and maybe a mixture of other memory. But you have to take, all the memory that whatever the loss is, you have to absorb it, and we'll give you memory that maybe you could use to change your business model a little bit, and maybe they could shift things around. They do have some flexibility to do that, but notice that what I'm talking about is a timeline of the middle of 2027, the end of 2027, maybe at most early 2028. Do you think that NVIDIA is going to start being like, whoa, we don't have that many 5090s, but let's lower the prices on them to keep these customers happy? No, of course not. They're already in. They're bought in on this plan. They're marching towards it. So if it's not a profitable plan, it sucks for them, but that's the plan that they made. So any of these data centers that are already being built, construction's already started for them, they're going to be built. That's just how it is. So most likely, if the sentiment towards these AI data centers starts cooling down and investors start saying, you know what, we're going to sell stock unless you guys can start making money, then most likely what's going to happen is kind of a half and half between, data centers are going to go up. There's going to be a few winners in the AI market, and a lot of other companies they're toast. They're cooked, chat. They're toast. So any of these AI startups that are working around inference being rented out and offering inference as a service, like some of those guys are screwed. And in my opinion, the companies that have major diversity in what they do are definitely the ones that are going to survive the storm. Companies like OpenAI, Anthropic, those companies, I don't know how things are going to go for them. Gemini and maybe even XAI or whatever, Grok, and what's the Copilot one with Microsoft, they probably have the legs to survive. But the other companies where all their business is inference, I wouldn't hold on to their stock if I were you guys. But, hey, how is this going to affect us as consumers? Well, it's kind of a good news, bad news situation. So the good news is, yes, hardware is probably going to get cheaper at some point within the next 2 years. But it's still 2 years, which brings me to the bad news. The bad news is that AI is not going away. It's going to correct, and some companies are going to survive. What's most likely going to happen is that companies are going to realize they can't just replace their workers with an AI subscription. AI lacks the ability to proactively start to do things. That's something very real. In the hands of engineers, of technical experts, which do cost you salary to pay, it can be a very powerful tool. It is a very powerful tool. A lot of my peers, a lot of my coworkers use it every single day. It's a very powerful tool. However, you still need a human being behind the proactive decisions, the thought process about what is important right now. AI doesn't have the ability to actively think about things. And this is something that there's a very, very big, I believe his name is Jan something. He was like the father of Vision AI with Meta, and he left them recently because he wanted to research what is actually going to be the technology that leads us to advanced general intelligence or actual AI. Because in his view, he believed that this brute force version of AI, I think it's Jan LeCun, I think that's his name. He believes that inference is a dead end. It's not going to get us in any advanced AI. It's always going to serve as a very, very simple tool because the math that it depends on is just largely statistical. It's linear algebra with a weighted result. It's math. It's math. A university graduate in engineering could figure out this math, and it's basically probability to a result using like weighted matrices. Now, is that real AI? Does AI, is it like sentient? No, and it's technology that's not going to lead to sentience either. So in actuality, this current AI boom is not, it doesn't offer lucrative investments in the future for research and development. There's not going to be insane patents that come out of it that lead to growth towards AI. So ultimately, it's a technology dead end. And what that means is that even if it takes off, there eventually reaches a point where accelerations in development for hardware are not going to offer you more advantages. We're already at a point where 50 billion to 100 billion parameter models are already achieving pretty much 100% of what Anthropic and OpenAI can do. I mean, if you look at these models that they're using in China, they're actually quite powerful. I mean, if you think about what 95% of people need to do to help them get through their day, is there really any sort of advancements to what AI does now versus what it did a month ago compared to how big it was of a difference 2 months ago compared to like 1 year ago? And what you'll notice is that we're reaching a plateau of what the tech can do. And that's why it's ultimately good news for us as hardware consumers, because it means that we're reaching a point where people aren't going to be demanding advanced AI, advanced accelerators, advanced technology, where they're eventually going to say, you know what, the accelerators that we got from NVIDIA last year are good enough. We don't need to buy your new ones. And they're going to say that for even 2 years at a time or 3 years at a time. So ultimately, there is a pending future that's coming up where this hardware, it doesn't need to be the latest, the most advanced, and the latest and greatest. And what do you think is going to happen to hardware manufacturers when that happens? They're going to have to come crawling back to us, the consumers. Now, that is the good news, but the bad news is that's not going to happen anytime soon. Which brings me to the conclusion. And the conclusion is, if you don't need a computer right away, if you're on a DDR4 system with an AM4 processor, Do you really need AM5, like a new 9000 series processor? Probably not. Not for what you do on a day-to-day basis. You probably don't need more than 16 gigs of VRAM. It's unfortunate that NVIDIA has sort of, NVIDIA and AMD for that matter, have sort of put this like major cost barrier on anything above 16 gigs of VRAM, but you probably don't need much more than that. And the other thing is that game developers, they're definitely going to tune the graphics demands of their games when they know that 90% of their customers have 8 gigs of VRAM, at most 12 gigs of VRAM. So 16 gigs of VRAM is a luxury, and if you have anything close to that or that, you're good. You know, you're good. Just wait the storm. But however, if you're somebody who needs a computer coming soon, like maybe you start university this fall, I honestly think that if you're on like a 4-year-old computer or a 5-year-old computer, you should consider upgrading it. Yes, you're eating a shit sandwich, but it's like that character in Walking Dead said, if you're gonna have to eat a shit sandwich, it's better to just bite, chew, swallow, repeat. So if you need a computer, if you really, really need a computer this fall, I would strongly consider getting something. And if you can't really afford the new prices, consider a used computer. I've seen used computers with 32 gigs of DDR4 and, you know, a 5800X 3D going for like well under $1,000, you know, and that is hardware that can last you a year or 2 years until hardware prices start to come down. So that's the one piece of advice I have, is if you need something, get it now. And you know, don't be so angry. Like, don't be angry at scalpers. Don't be angry at, you know, like, these are just people that are taking advantage of, you know, what's going on, but you don't really know their story. You know, like, if somebody is turning around and selling Pokemon cards for 2 or 3 times MSRP, what if they're a former technician at, I definitely need to kill that bug. What if they're a former Tesla technician that got laid off, you know, and they've been trying to find work, and this is really the only thing that they have to put food on the table, is going to Best Buy and Walmart and Target and picking up Pokemon cards and then flipping them for a profit. Like, don't you, on the flip side, don't you feel kind of bad for somebody in that situation? I certainly do. I love Pokemon cards. I wish that I could get them for MSRP, but I'm not angry at people that sell them for above MSRP, because, you know, that's the economy that we're in right now. It really sucks. It's unfortunate, but people just have to do what they have to do to survive. So dial down the anger and try to assess the situation and be reasonable and think about what is actually happening. And so that's my conclusion. The AI bubble is likely going to correct in some way. AI services aren't going away, and consumer hardware is most likely going to get cheaper, but it's not going to be anytime soon. So that's the reality that we have to live with. And so if you need hardware, I hope you take my advice, which is basically, if you need something soon, it's better to buy now than wait, because it's probably going to be more expensive at the end of the year. And if you don't need hardware like right away, I think you're better off waiting, or get something used just to hold you over. And, you know, dial down the anger a little bit, and don't think that AI is just going to go away. That's it. That's my talk. Do me a favor, guys, if you like my video and you like the stuff that I talk about, please hit the like, hit the subscribe. I'm going to be talking about actual hardware soon, so be ready for that. I'm going to actually do a review of my RS50 Logitech set. I'm going to do a review of PSVR 2 on PC. I'm going to give that a try, tell you guys what I think, and I might actually talk about flight simulators now, believe it or not. I have some flight sim hardware set up, and I'm going to talk about that, so stay tuned for that. You know, and sorry guys, I've been inconsistent about this, but I will see you guys next time. I'll have another video coming up soon. Oh, and last thing, nobody bought that AI Pro 9700 graphics card, so, you know, I decided I'm going to use it for my own machine. It is what it is. A couple guys said that they wanted to buy it. Nothing happened. They never sent me payment. They never contacted me about it. Never. So no more. I'm not selling it anymore. So if you watch that video and you are thinking now that you wanted to buy it, it's too late. Nobody was serious about buying it, so it's off the market. All right, I'll talk to you guys later. Thank you for watching. See you next time.